You are sleeping on these cards in your commander decks. I know it's only been a couple of weeks and everyone is still figuring out what to do with the new spells in this set, but I'm busting out 10 low-key and low-price bangers from the Wilds of Eldraine. As of recording this video, none of these cards have hit 1,000 decks in EDHREC's database, and it's time for that to change. So let's monkey around. Cruel Somnophage and the adventure Can't Wake Up is first on the docket. More players means more creatures in graveyards. Cruel Somnophage is 1 and a black and has a power and toughness equal to the number of creatures in graveyards. Not your graveyard, all graveyards. I'm pretty sure this creature is the upside downs version of Lurgoyf, and the rate of its mana cost is substantially better. Just a handful of turns into the game with a streamlined strategy of milling libraries or forcing discards, this creature's power and toughness should be well beyond what a 2 mana cost creature should have, and it'll only get more scary from there. Its adventure, Can't Wake Up, costs 1 and a blue and enables the creature, making a target player mill 4 cards. Side note, I was fortunate enough to pull one of these at pre-release and was able to cast it once to close out a game. And in that one-on-one limited format, its power and toughness was 11. So there is opportunity for a massive creature here in the commander format. Lazav, the Multifarious, is a shape-shifting commander that surveils 1 when entering the battlefield. His activatable ability costs X and will have him transform into a target creature in your graveyard with mana cost of X. If your Cruel Somnophage has found its way to the graveyard one way or another, Lazav can assume its form and take on its ability, likely growing well beyond his starting 1/3 stat line. Mirko Vosk, Mind Drinker, is a milling machine whenever he is able to deal combat damage to a player. When he does, that player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal 4 land cards, and then puts all of those revealed cards into the graveyard. Mirko is a flying creature, so there's a good chance that evasion will get you some hits on players, and then your Somnophage will feast. Rexiel, the Risen Deep, is a pretty evasive creature for a massive kraken, and can be a really powerful commander to lead a milling the opponent strategy. And with the Cruel Somnophage, you're getting value from all the creatures that are being put into the graveyard. And then, when you do combat damage to a player with Rexiel, you're getting more value by freely casting a target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard before exiling it. Elusive Otter and the adventure Grove's Bounty. Green encounters have a stable and long-term relationship, and I'm really happy for them. The sorcery adventure Grove's Bounty is yet another feather in their cap, with a good rate of counter distribution with only the extra green mana tacked on to the X cost, while letting you spread the love among any number of creatures you control. With synergistic cards like Ozolith the Shattered Spire, 1 counter per creature turns into 2 counters per creature. Kami of Whispered Hopes would make that 3 counters per creature. And if you've been blessed with acquiring a doubling season, you'd have approximately 19,000 counters per creature. Even without any of those bonuses, there are so many good reasons to get those counters onto your creatures. The other side, Elusive Otter, is aptly named as it can't be blocked by creatures with less power than it. And it has prowess built in, where non-creature spells grant the creature +1/+1 until the end of the turn. Meaning that if you're playing Simic counters, this Elusive Otter can become an elusive chonker, demanding a response from your opponents. Tanazir Quandrix can make sure the Otter is unblockable, so long as it has some counters on it already. by doubling the amount of counters it has as the Elder Dragon enters the battlefield. If that wasn't enough, when Tanazir attacks, each other creature you control can assume the same power and toughness that Tanazir has until the end of the turn. Starting at 4, but with all the counters presumably flying around in the build, probably higher than that. And as the Elusive Otter only has 1 power and toughness, that base stat line boost will prove to be massive. Both Azuri's Claw of Progress and Stalker of Spheres would be great commanders of this spell as well. The Elusive Otter has a power of 1, which would grant you an experience counter, and then the experience counter payoff would eventually or quickly make it unblockable. The Stalker of Spheres would introduce the different strategy of proliferation, which I really like, especially with the Adventure Grove's Bounty. Just a single counter on each creature you control, followed up with some proliferation, can create a spooky board state very quickly. And because you're drawing cards when you proliferate, thanks to Azuri's passive, you won't be running out of gas. We are about to adventure into infinite combo territory. But before that, take a couple of seconds of your time to subscribe to the channel. It means a whole lot to me, and you'll be getting Commander content coming your way every week. Experimental Confectioner enters the battlefield as a 2/3 body with a food token for 2 and a black. The Confectioner's passive trigger creates a 1/1 rat that can't block whenever a food token is sacrificed, whether it is for the standard life gain or another way, like Devour Food, featured on the Feasting Hobbit. This goes really well with food decks, which have been super supported in the 2 most recent sets, Wilds of Eldraine and Tales of Middle-earth. This creature also goes infinite with Peregrine Took, if both permanents and 3 food are on the battlefield. First, activate Peregrine Took by sacrificing the 3 foods that you control. Each food sacrifice will trigger Experimental Confectioner's second ability, creating 3 rat creature tokens. And since each rat creation was an individual instance, Peregrine will create 3 food tokens as well. Peregrine's activatable ability will now resolve, letting you draw that card, and then you can repeat that to draw your whole deck, have infinite token creation, infinite token sacrifice, and infinite ETB. This gives you a lot of ways to win. Jahaira, Friend of the Forest, will turn the foods and rats into green mana dorks, as they are all tokens, and with the legendary enchantment background, Agent of the Iron Throne, turn all that food sacrifice from the combo into game-ending damage when they are put in the graveyard, as all those foods are artifacts. Mazarek, Crawl Death Priest, will add a +1/+1 counter to all your creatures when you sacrifice that food, and the rats that Confectioner creates are amazing sacrifice fodder as well to get more counters and enable other sacrifice engines. Mazarek's ability also triggers when opponents sacrifice permanents, so it's a great answer to opposing sacrifice decks. Or you can make all your opponents start sacrificing permanents with spells like Sheoldred's Edict, or a way more mean spell like Grave Pact to grow your rat army all the way to the moon. Sabra, Queen of the Golgari's first ability lets you pay 2 life when you sacrifice a black creature to force each other player to sacrifice a creature of their own. The rat tokens the Experimental Confectioner whips up, that, as I said before, are great sack fodder, are black. So if you got that creature from eating food for 3 life, your net life total is +1 after all is said and done, while your opponents are likely hurting much more from that interaction. Lord Skitter's Butcher has found success in Limited, like so many creatures that create an extra body on ETB do, which is the first of 3 different ETB effects you can choose with this creature. And as an early play in Commander, that is also totally fine to do. The second ability lets you sacrifice a creature to scry 2 and then draw a card, so if you're short on cards or need to find something juicy to really get your game going, this is another fine ability. Tucked all the way at the bottom though is where I think this creature can come up huge in decks that are swarming the board with creatures and creature tokens, like so many rat decks tend to do. With Carumonix the Rat King among the prime commanders for which I want this card in the 99. The last ability gives all creatures you control Menace until the end of the turn. Menace becomes more menacing when you have a super wide board, and when you are needing to get to that 10 poison counter mark rather than 40 damage, giving all your toxic rats from Carumonix's ability Menace will be able to push through so many more of those deadly counters. The same is true for Vishgraz the Doomhive that enters the battlefield with 3 Phyrexian Mites, and Rhea Ivor, Bane of Bladehold, that creates those same mites rather than applying damage to a player with a target creature. Both of these commanders are in the business of creating boatloads of these toxic Phyrexian Mites to go for a poison victory, and when you've got a board full of them, they can't block anyway. Give them Menace with Lord Skitter's Butcher and full send it, baby. We've got 2 blue flash spells on deck. The first is Horned Loch-whale and its adventure Lagoon Breach. Starting with that instant adventure, you are paying 1 and a blue to bounce a target attacking creature you don't control to the top or bottom of its owner's library. This is a great way to remove a scary token from the game completely, bounce a commander to set your opponent back a turn, or help out a fellow player out of the kindness of your heart, or because you need them to take down the archenemy. Try to make them believe it's the first one though, so you can get something in return. The creature side is a 4 and 2 blue 6/6 whale with flash and ward 2. The downside is that it comes in tapped when you flash it in. With support from Vizier of Tumbling Sands or Fate Stitcher, untapping it could blow out an opponent that chose to attack you with so much mana of yours available. Even if you don't, when commanded by Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter, the 6 mana cost will almost certainly allow you to cast the revealed top card of your library for free. Surak Dragonclaw will ensure the creature resolves as it can't be countered, and will give it trample so it can swing in to start threatening life totals. Afara, God of the Polis, rewards you with a drawn card each upkeep if you had a creature enter the battlefield under your control during the previous turn. While you will probably want a host of lower cost flash creatures to get the most amount of drawn cards, this card has 2 spells on it, so keep the adventure up for defense and then save that exiled whale for a rainy day. The second flash blue spell is the sorcery, Asinine Antics, which is not super budget, but still only $3 at the time of recording, and I love it, so here goes. For 2 and 2 blue, you create a cursed roll token attached to every creature opponents control. Cursed roll tokens turn the power and toughness of the enchanted creature into 1 and 1. For 2 additional mana, you can cast this spell with flash. This presents so many fun things that you can do. If 2 players are entering the dealing combat damage phase with one player severely outgunning the other who is chump blocking for his life, well, you can do some serious damage to both players' creatures in one fell swoop with this spell. Other options would be waiting until the end step before your turn to cast this spell, and following it up on your turn with a Golgari Charm or Nausea, giving all creatures -1/-1. Or be prepared for this moment with a completely unassuming Knight of Souls Betrayal already on the battlefield. Given these -1/-1 effects, you may want to be in a Dimir mana base, so a commander like Toxrill the Corrosive would be fully enchanted by having this spell in the 99. For those unaware, on every end step, Toxrill puts a slime counter on every creature you don't control, Each slime counter gives that creature -1/-1. If a creature dies with at least one slime counter on it, Toxrill creates a 1/1 slug creature token, which can then be sacrificed if you so choose for a blue and a black to draw a card. That's some pretty scary stuff. Lind, Cheerful Tormentor, is a curse commander, and while the curse rolls are not exactly the curses Lind has so much fun tormenting people with that fuel those 2 drawn cards on your upkeep, the flavor is absolutely there. And besides, if you keep cursing people, you will be a player removal target, and a good way to stay in the game is making all your opponent's creatures tiny little 1/1s. Tuvasa the Sunlit can get very powerful very fast when this sorcery is played, as her power increases for each enchantment you control, and although the cursed rolls are attached to enemy creatures, they remain under your control. 3 Blind Mice is a 2 and a white saga that pumps out 3 permanents so long as you have a token on the battlefield for the 2nd and 3rd chapters, which after the 1st chapter grants you a token, you probably will. As a turn 3 play in Commander, it's not bad. It's like a scuffed wedding announcement. It's not a big deal though, because this spell will likely find itself in a token-esque type deck anyway, where they will be used as sacrifice fuel or powered up with Intangible Virtue or Aven Wind Guide. So getting those bodies on the battlefield is going to end up good regardless. But I'm not really after 3 blind 1/1 mouse creatures. There are ways to create massive creature tokens with spells like Phyrexian Rebirth and Slime Molding that would be amazing targets to copy. Twice. Even the remnants of the Wormcoil engine having Death Touch or Lifelink are nice targets, and this is where the real value is. Later on in the game, when you have these threats on board, just waiting for some buddies to join in. I will say the nature of sagas does telegraph what you're trying to do, so you may face some removal of the really big creature tokens, which is probably good because that removal isn't being used on your commander or other key permanents. Either way, some backup options like the death-touching insects from the Hornet Queen would be good to have in hand. I know, a 7-mana backup plan is super easy for everyone. The last chapter giving a slight power boost and vigilance is just the icing on the cake. The token doubling Mondrak, Glory Dominus, is a natural fit for 3 blind mice, because token doubling good, simple as. Ghalta and Mavrin can create a massive trampling dinosaur creature token that would be an excellent target, especially as the trampling would be copied as well. And then having that second massive creature token on the battlefield during your next combat phase will give Ghalta and Mavrin another target just in case one of your other high-powered creatures meets its maker. In Jetmir, Nexus of Revels just wants creatures on the battlefield to do the thing, and 3 creatures from one spell that should have better targets than the 1/1 mouse to copy will help him get there. Twining Twins and the adventure Swift Spiral are 2 solid pieces in an Azorius-based deck. The adventure is a 1 and a white instant that will exile a target non-token creature from the battlefield right until it returns at the beginning of the next end step. Defensively, this can certainly help out in a pinch, but would probably be better served triggering a huge ETB effect from a creature you control. The monstrosity of the lake could actually be paid for with this blank effect, tapping and stunning every creature your opponents control. This has turned into something of a pet card because it can be super powerful, but it's also super janky, and that's just exciting for me. The creature side is a 2 and a blue 4/4 flying vigilant ward 1 fairy that is just really solid to keep the pressure on your opponents attacking through the air and as an aerial blocker. Alela, Artful Provocateur, is the first iteration of Alela, but encapsulates the white and blue, and would be more than happy to include this fairy in the 99. In a focused build, there are strong blinking targets, including Fairy Harbinger, tutoring a fairy to the top of your library, or resetting Glen Elendra Archmage, allowing her to persist once again. Lagrella the Magpie, when entering the battlefield, can exile a creature of yours, and when you blink her with Swift Spiral, that creature will presumably have an excellent ETB effect. Get those 2+1/+1 counters, and then you can pick up another creature from each player until she leaves the battlefield. Or maybe you're an Atraxa Grand Unifier player. Blinking her happens to be really good, and Twining Twins has the right colors for it. Discerning Financier knows that it's often not the best to leave your card triggers up to the actions your opponents take. For instance, if Monologue Tax is on the table, I'm going to hold off on casting that second spell when I can. But Discerning Financier takes advantage of your opponents by creating a treasure if one of them controls more lands than you during your upkeep. And land drops is something you can rely on your opponents hitting when they can. Its second ability is a pretty expensive way to draw a card, but could be used for political purposes. If someone needs that 1 mana to counter a board wipe, or a major threat like Omniscience when it's on the stack. Or maybe they just need it to cast their commander, and that feels fine for you, because if they agree to leave you alone until your next turn, you've got the win in hand. While I think this creature is a decent play in decks that have white as a budget way to keep the pace with ramping decks, having artifacts matter in some capacity elevates the Discerning Financier to more than just a decent play. Akiri Lineslinger gains power based on how many artifacts you control, and can partner up with a creature like Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator to keep those treasures rolling in. If you need those treasures to cast your good stuff, you should definitely do that, but if you can hoard them, then you've got a mighty strong first striker looking to swing in. If you hit on that treasure in your upkeep, Marneus Kalgar's Master Tactician ability will trigger and draw you a card. And Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff, is always looking for more ways to make or steal money. So while the Noble Financier may scoff at the Corrupt Sheriff's methods, it's hard to argue against a fat wallet. Saving the best for last, Gruff Triplets is a limited all-star that I want to see in more commander decks starting right now. This spell is 3 and 3 green for a 3/3 trampler that creates 2 tokens of itself. Now we've got 3 3/3 tramplers, and the best is yet to come. When Gruff Triplets dies, you put counters equal to its power onto each other creature named Gruff Triplets. 3 3/3 tramplers can turn into 2 6/6 tramplers, into 1 12/12 trampler, and now we are cooking with gas. By the way, that token, pretty good target for 3 blind mice. Add any other way to boost their power, and the remaining Gruff Triplets will only become stronger through the death trigger. This creature fits right in with one of my favorite commanders, Henzi Toolbox Torre, as the cost will be cheapened when you blitz it out, and while the creature you cast will have to be sacrificed if it didn't already die in combat, the 2 tokens it made will remain, each getting the 3 +1/+1 counters. Gallia of the Endless Dance is the Satyr commander, and the Gruff Triplets feels amazing in her 99. They all come in with haste and become 4/4s due to her passive, and if you attack with all of them, you trigger her other ability, giving you card advantage. The total power of 9 on board will make Ghalta Primal Hunger incredibly cheap as a follow-up. You could choose this to be the only satyr or warrior creature in your Volo Guide to Monsters deck, so you can copy it, creating a total of 6 Gruff Triplets, each able to get the counter transfer. Remember that math from earlier? It looks more like 6 3/3 tramplers into 5 6/6 tramplers into 4 12/12 tramplers, and holy smokes, somebody has got to stop you already. Same idea with Marin, Clan of Nel Toth, where you can return gruff triplets to the battlefield from the graveyard, creating more of the tokens, all of which can grow from the death trigger. I know the triple green pip is intimidating, but I truly think this creature can completely take over games in Commander, just as it's doing in Limited. Before you go, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below what Wilds of Eldraine spells have made the biggest impact in your Commander games, either for you or against you. Catch you later for some more monkeying around.